Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest and a man in long-term recovery. I've had the gift of sobriety since December the 27th of 1972. The idea behind these podcasts is to take subjects that people in 12-step recovery might be interested in: spirituality, the history of the program, the psychology of the program, and then different subject matters that maybe often get overlooked or neglected. So that's what we try to be about here. And if you like what you're hearing, be sure to press that like button, subscribe, and most of all, tell a friend if you think this information would be helpful to them. And just before we get started with this episode, I did want to announce that when this comes up, the new book I did on two-way prayer, my first book and last book, will be coming out on July 1st. If you're interested in that subject, how they did what we would term the 11th step in our 12-step program, how that all came about, how to go about doing it, and I tried in some ways to modernize it. I mean, this was information from almost 100 years ago, and we needed to dust some of it off and make it more applicable to people today. So you can get it at your favorite bookstore. I'll put a link to it in the show notes here. So we are now into the second episode of a series we're doing on another book that is titled Out of the Woods, A Woman's Guide to Long-Term Recovery, and my guest is the author of that book, Diane Cameron. In addition to being an author, Diane is a journalist, columnist, recovery coach, and a woman in long-term recovery herself. So Diane, welcome back to the podcast, and I hope you're having some fun with this thing.
I am, and I have to say, I cannot wait till your new book arrives, because here I am. I'm a woman in long-term recovery, 40 plus years, and only in the last year did I learn about this prayer process. And it was like, whoa, a new thing, a new spiritual practice.
Yeah, a new thing, which is an old thing.
Exactly.
And that's the important part of this, not something new agey coming out of California, but, it goes back to our history. And I think it was one of the most powerful elements of the history. And it got lost, as things do. So you go back to the original and see what was going on there. So good.
And I love that. I love that because we're learning the history too. And while that's, that may not be relevant to the newcomer, but we need to know our history. We need to know where this gift comes from.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably too terribly important for people just coming in. But after you've been around for a while, then it's time to dig in and go back to the original stuff. So
right.
That was my experience. I was 20 years sober when I got introduced to this material, but it changed my life.
I bet. Yep.
Totally
it's changing
changed
mine right now, which is kind of amazing.
Well, there you go. And folks, if you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see Diane transform right in front of you. It's an amazing process.
It's true.
Okay, we left off last time with Chapter 2. We covered some of the physical challenges that women face in recovery. And one of those, you say, is menopause. And
yes.
You write this. For a woman in recovery, menopause can be a time of additional vulnerability. Could you walk us through what some of those challenges might be?
Yes, and I'm going to start with a little piece of research, the stats that I discovered. At University College London, 70% of the women who present for addiction recovery, substance abuse recovery, are between the ages of 40 and 60. So something's going on in women's lives. Now, we know the medical, scientific side of menopause, hormones are changing, the body is changing. And unfortunately, it triggers all kinds of difficulties, right? Insomnia, mood swings, hot flashes, night sweats, no fun at all, fatigue. So for a woman who maybe is misusing substances and all of this is happening, guess what you reach for? You reach for substances because like, oh, I want to feel better. I want to have more energy. The biggie, most dangerous is I can't sleep. We know a glass of wine used to help that anyway. I'm going to think that wine will help and maybe sleeping pills will help. And as soon as you know it, you're addicted. Now, also for women who are already in recovery, let's say you got sober in your late 20s and your 30s and all going along good. And then no fault of yours, but your body is changing, right? And these things start to appear. The craziness, I think, is that some of what menopause symptoms can look like is they can look like character defects, right? These moods, this crankiness, this be fighting with people because your hormones are going up and down. And you think, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my recovery? If you don't know what's going on in the body. And then you're tempted back to substances, right? I don't like this anymore. I've had this nice, long, peaceful recovery in my life, very joyful. And now it seems like everything's going to heck. And so that's a danger. And I think this is why, I mean, I say I wrote the book because of what women were talking about in the parking lot instead of in the meetings. And this is why we need women's meetings. We need women to be talking to each other. This is why you need a sponsor. I found this true. Who's a little bit older than you, right? So she can say, honey, I think this is what's happening. Go talk to your doctor. And it's tricky because there's also character defects mixed in this, right? It's not black and white. So how do you sort that out? How do you discern, to use one of our spiritual words, how do you discern what is going on? And then because of those ages 40 to 60, that's going to occur during a period of empty nest. Maybe kids are going off. Maybe the marriage is changing. Maybe we want to get into a new relationship. All of that stuff is happening at the same time in women's lives.
It's kind of the time of the midlife crisis.
Absolutely.
If you take a Jungian perspective on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we know that there is a parallel for men, but it doesn't manifest in quite the same way, in an outward way. This is when men have affairs. This is men are questioning their own attractiveness. They're questioning their sexual prowess. All those kinds of things are happening too. But because of our cultural view of women and these kinds of things, we're seeing a crazy woman, right? That's always been like the accusation.
Right. There's no question women have it tougher, particularly in our culture.
Yeah.
The next part of your chapter deals with sex in recovery. And you write, for many women, I like this, it was either too much or too little, and often it was with the wrong people. So what are some of the additional challenges women face when it comes to sex? So
we know one of the first things coming into recovery, there's a lot of shame about their sexual behavior when they were using. Now, part of it may have been their own choice. Maybe they were, having too many partners or the wrong people. But this is also where the intersection of sexual abuse comes in. We know culturally high numbers of girls, young women, have been sexually abused. They're not clear because of their substance abuse what was their fault. And we also know a lot of victims even think that the young girl is somehow at fault. It's a tragedy that blame gets turned inward. So we come in with all of the sexual baggage and it needs to get sorted out. And again, you can't quite do that in a mixed meeting, or we're afraid to, we're shy about it. We're shy culturally about sex, period. But you need a sponsor who can say, honey, your fifth step's going to include some of this stuff.
Or a therapist. I mean, if a therapist is available, that person's going to be able to take you a lot deeper than a sponsor can go.
I will tell you, I feel very grateful that I had therapy all through my recovery. Yeah. And I say to people, like, you can just do the steps and do recovery and all that stuff. And that's great. That's one game show. You can take that prize and go home. But you want to make this really good, go to therapy also. Because some of the family stuff, you need to work that out in some kind of therapy.
There's a lot that has to be covered. When a problem comes up, if I'm interpreting you correctly here, the first thing you should look at is what's going on physically.
That's right.
That's right. Don't just run into I'm crazy. There may be some biological, physiological reasons that are happening here.
Yeah. And I have to say, because I've been here for 40 years, you've been here longer, that there were times in AA, in 12-step programs, when people were depressed and we told them they weren't working their program properly.
Right.
Or they were having something that was actually physical, but we were sort of blaming them for not being well recovered enough, which is a tragedy.
It must be my fault.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to go back to the parking lot for a little discussion here. All right. And you write this, a woman must take responsibility for her orgasm. So I want you to take the lead in this.
All right, great.
Yeah,
Well, I'm glad
I'm
that
going to shut up on this one.
I am so glad that you are brave enough to include this discussion, include
I
that
thought twice
word.
about it, but the third time was go for it.
We're all grown-ups here. Now,
Yeah.
maybe younger women, I'm not so sure about this, but I'll say maybe younger women, if you believe social media, they're much better educated about their bodies and their sexuality.
Right.
But I still see younger women stumbling over how to talk about their own sexuality, their sexual relationship. Now, women my age and older have gone years without knowing how to create pleasure for themselves. Now, now there's this is true for me. The codependency that comes up in a woman's life. I knew how to please a man. I knew how to be an attractive partner. I knew how, and that was like 90% of my sexual relationships young were like, is he happy? Does he like me? Did I make it good for him? And I didn't have a clue how my body worked. Or this is like the real thing, that I had a right to my own pleasure, right? So I think there's books out there that'll give us the language. There are, lots of ways to learn about this. But one of the other things, and I was thinking about this, is every year, mostly women go for their annual checkup, their doctor, their OBGYN. And one of the questions they're going to say, are you sexually active, right? Because they want to know, do we need to talk about birth control? Do we need to talk about sexually transmitted diseases? Are you safe? I have never heard a doctor ask a woman, and how about your pleasure? Is your sex life satisfying? Are you finding a good sexual relationship? And that's crucial, emotionally and physically, because maybe there's something not working physically, or maybe a woman doesn't know, right? And for a doctor to be able to initiate the conversation would be an eye opener, I think.
You think a female physician would be more able to go into that subject area?
I think they'd be more able. I don't know that they're more likely.
They're not likely. Yeah.
I've had lots of women doctors, lovely, terrific, well-educated, educate me, but they're not asking. We need to move that conversation, because that's why it's happening in the parking lot. Somebody's crying about their relationship or their marriage or whatever. And one brave woman is going to say, honey, is it working? Like, come on, tell the truth here. Let's go. And maybe they give them a few clues, or tell them what book to read, because that can be depressing. It can create anxiety. Here's where it goes back to, right? If you were using substances as a very young adult, you were probably using alcohol and substances while you were having sex. So you think, I need that to have good sex. I need to be drunk or tipsy or inebriated or high.
Hey, same is true for men.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alcohol and sex go right together.
Right. I remember one of the jokes that they probably still say it. They say, like, when people are newly getting sober, the two things you're going to have to experience, you're going to have to learn to dance without alcohol, and you have to learn to have sex without alcohol.
Right. That's right.
And have those experiences. And because both of those are coming into your body. Holy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, we've gone this far. Your book takes one more leap about Kegel exercises. Go for it, Diane. You got our attention here.
Thank God it's in social media, and it's in conversations, and it's in conversations about menopause and aging, that these are pelvic floor exercises. This is that muscle in your pelvic floor. It has to be strong enough, right, to create an orgasm. But the other function of that Kegel muscle is continence, and not be wetting your pants, not be sneezing and saying, oops. And the important thing, I wrote a book for women. Men can do Kegel and should do Kegel exercises also for all those reasons. Again, it used to be women whispered to other women, and now you're hearing about it, but I don't know that it's out there enough to say, you brush your teeth, you do your sit-ups and your push-ups, and you should do your Kegels. I put that in your day. But
add that to your morning quiet time, folks. So there you go.
That would be funny.
There you go.
That would be very funny.
In Chapter 3, we'll move on from 2. In Chapter 3, you address some of the mental and emotional challenges that women are sure to face. And one of the topics you cover is coping methods that actually both men and women use to run from feelings. I like the quote you have from a friend saying, feelings can't hit a moving target.
I love that too. My friend Bridget told me that early on, and was like, and we say it back and forth to each other now, because it's like, I don't know what's going on with me. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. And so, because we both have this tendency, it's like, okay, I should be sitting down, maybe having some quiet time, figure out why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. But I think I'll go bake a cake, and then I'll work on a work project, and then I'll do some other stuff.
Anything but feel.
Anything but feel. Anything but feel. And I think this is what leads to early in recovery, but it continues along the way, transferring addictions. I don't know one person who came in for alcohol, dealt with their alcohol, and that was the end of it. It's almost like, a freshman in college. You're going to gain the freshman 15. You put down the alcohol, and food looks really good, or exercise, or shopping for women, shopping, right? Now I feel better about myself. Now I'm sober. I think I'll get new clothes. And then I'm at the mall 3 nights a week. All of those, what's next, what's next, what's next.
A lot of it has to do with anxiety.
Yes, it does.
Would you not say that? That's what I've come to. I found something that relieved being me.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I was talking to a woman who's very new, like weeks new, and she's very pleased that she stopped drinking, but she doesn't surprise. She doesn't feel great because all those feelings that were waiting to go somewhere, here they come. And a lot of it's anxiety, like that anxiety I've been pushing down all this time.
Right.
It's coming up. So now what am I going to do? Now, the good news is, and this can happen too, is like, I'm going to go to 1 million meetings. I did this early on. I'll do service at 12 meetings. I'll go to 1 million meetings. I'll sponsor 12 people. That's a way of managing it too, right? And then we learn not so much, honey. I had a sponsor.
Stay busy.
Not so much.
Don't
Yeah.
stop.
Right. Except we learn this is in the prayer. We need to stop. We need to sit still. We need to listen. And this is our culture too. Now we have social media. Maybe I'm sober,
God.
but I can't stay off my phone no matter what.
I watch people at airports going out to dinner and such. Immediately out come the phones.
Right. In supermarket lines, if you have to wait through, let's say 3, 4 people, the phone's going to come out. And I had to teach myself because I would do that too. I'd want to let me just check my messages and then say, you can stand here, honey. It's okay. You can look around the store. You can pay attention to the woman in front of you.
I'm not going to die. It'll feel like I'm going to die if I don't do this. I mean, it's just like alcohol. If I don't get that drink, I'm going to die.
Right.
And that's the same feeling when I reach for the phone. I can't face what's in front of me.
So I'll distract me just a little bit. And I think this is why community is such an important part of our program, is we need one to laugh about it. We need to say to each other, put your phone away. You can stand it. But that whole idea of transferring addictions, and I have to say, this is something I have heard slowly change, but it used to be, I've heard people make jokes about food in meetings, and they were like, well, I never got arrested for eating while driving. Guess what? Now we know that's distracted driving too, right? That's the same as having your phone in the car. If you're eating while you're driving out of anxiety, keep reaching for the snacks in that passenger seat, you're not present in the car. So it can't. And then what's doing to your health, period.
They say that people with eating disorders have a tougher time. It's a different addiction than is alcohol. Alcohol you can put down. Food, you got to take the tiger out of the cage 3 or 4 times a day.
Right. I love that we get to lock up the tiger. If food is your issue, you've got to take him for a walk 3 times a day.
Right.
That's hard.
But that also becomes an opportunity, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. 3 times a day you get to say, if you're really trying to, like, what am I feeling? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Why this food? Why this food now?
What is this encounter with this chemical really, going to do for me?
And I think that's the progress of recovery, is you don't know right away, right? I just want that potato chip. I'm not asking questions. And then you learn to pause. Maybe you're still going to eat that bag of potato chips, but you're going to pause first. Yeah. And next time it'll be half a bag. And next time you just look at the bag and say, do I really? What's going on? Why don't I call my sponsor? It's like, call your sponsor before you drink.
Boy, we just face these things throughout the day, these opportunities to either go to sleep or wake up. And if I want to go to sleep, then I've found the things that put me to sleep. And we've got to identify them.
I found that there are 2 slippery ones where good things can become addictive too. Good things can prevent us, like work, right? Like what's wrong with being successful and going to work and working for the promotion, unless it's keeping you from feeling. You've got to really sort that one out. And the other one is exercise. People get into recovery, they get sober, they start to feel their body, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to start jogging. I'm going to start going to the gym. And they do, and that's great. And all of a sudden, they're going to the gym twice a day. And all of a sudden, they're not home with their kids because they're at the gym. They're not in their relationship because they're at the gym. And it has replaced their drug. So it's like, what's the right amount?
Yeah. And religion is another one
Wow.
that looks so good. But man, can you hide behind the covers there?
And that looks really good. That
really
church,
good.
That church lady, that person official doing service at church, who's going to accuse you? Oh,
you're running from family in some cases.
Yeah.
You're staying busy so you don't have to encounter the divine,
Right. And then as a bonus, you have people admiring you for your addiction.
Of course, just like work addiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it really takes a lot of discernment, a lot of thinking through what is my intention here? What is this giving? What is this getting me?
This is the focus of inner work, in my view. It's a book by Robert Johnson. I'll put it in the show notes. It's a marvelous introduction to this inner life that's going on here. And I think we need to supplement our recoveries with an understanding of our emotional development, our physical development, our spiritual development. I mean, I can just kind of do my own thing, but it's really going to be very limited.
Right.
I can't look to a sponsor. I mean, I've had some very good sponsors and friends and such. Most of them are dead now. So one of the things about getting older in the program thing, and I'm looking for them less and less. I don't think there's anybody out there who can fix me anymore. Right. But I have found authors who are very helpful, books that are very helpful, and I'm not looking for new ones. I got about 10 or 12 authors, perhaps, that I keep going back to and going deeper and deeper into what are they saying and what am I missing?
Well, somebody like Johnson, it's so layered. You can't get it on the first pass, right? Just like, I want to go back to him. I don't think I completely grasp that. Or I'm at a different stage.
Right.
Now, what does he have to say to me?
Yeah. I've done some podcast series on Johnson's work. I'm going to do another one on he. Oh. Maybe you can do she for me.
That'd be great. Yeah.
You allude to the fact that going through a dark time in recovery might mean that it's a time to dig deeper. We kind of touched on this a few minutes ago, but let's go deeper into it. What are you getting at here?
So maybe you've heard this too. One of the things my sponsors say to me, as you're progressing in recovery, the zeros and the fives are going to be the years. Year 10, 15, 20, 25. You're going to be called on for something a little more, should you choose to go there. Now, those fives and zeros are the years to go deeper as you want to progress in your recovery. And I think sometimes it looks like, and again, this is big discernment time, it can look like depression. All the things you've been doing in your life and in the rooms, they've been good. And now you're at a place and it's like, that's not quite it anymore. I don't feel right. I feel like I'm missing something, or maybe I'm feeling sad. And maybe that's because some stuff's coming up. There's stuff inside of us. It's layered. It's very layered. Wounds that didn't appear, that happened a long time ago, but they didn't appear for years. Now they're safe enough to come to the surface. And it's like, so that's going to be the time maybe to go to a spiritual director or a therapist and say, there's some other stuff here I haven't faced yet. Now, one of the things I've found being an older woman in recovery is and I did this when I was new, the youngsters, no matter their age, when they're new in recovery, they look at that and they go, oh, she's always talking about being sad and she doesn't feel right. She's not doing her program right? They're on their pink cloud. They think this is like the answer for all time. And that other person across the room is like talking about difficult things. And they think, oh, if only she worked the steps, she'd feel better.
Right.
Well, you know what? It's like that stuff. It's the onion. It's layers of the onion. It's that inner work coming to the surface, asking to be healed. It's us asking us to grow. And they can look like very dark times.
Yeah. It's step 10.
Yes. Yes.
continued to go deeper.
Something that I learned in spiritual reading, and because I always thought dark night of the soul literally meant depression. It was like, oh,
Right.
you're depressed. And then
Right.
to read about like what the ancients thought is that is the time God is coming to you. He is coming in the dark, literally. He's coming and asking you to grow. He's coming and asking you to move on spiritually. And it's not fun. It is not fun. But again, you need community, you need a guide, you need somebody holding your hand.
I'm substituting something for God. That's, so much of a danger all along the way.
Right.
And the fundamentalists think they've found it, and the atheists think they don't need it.
Right. Right.
There's not a lot of help out there,
Right.
to kind of make this journey.
Yeah.
And the language needs to be boiled down and reconfigured. Those books that you find, those authors who you find, they're able to do that for you.
You know, I think it's very helpful to a lot of people because her language is very accessible and she's very human. She tells stories on herself. Anne Lamott, who is
Yes.
a woman in recovery. She's also brought recovery to people who were never interested in recovery. They're like, oh, what's part of her story? Oh, that's interesting. I wonder where she's getting those interesting ideas. But she'll talk about like, being mad at God. She'll talk about being disappointed in God, and it's okay. It's okay.
That's right. So they have a church parking lot too.
Yes, we should not be rushing back to the car. We should be pausing in that church parking lot a little bit.
To go to the church parking lot where you can talk about these things. Because a lot of the people in church are going to be very rigid and saying, don't talk about this. Do not go there. Read more of your Bible.
If you don't have the answer, you need to read the catechism because it's in there. Your answer's in there. Instead of being able to say, maybe, written a long time ago, what does it mean now? What does it mean for me now?
Someone said, I love it, the opposite of faith is certainty.
Oh.
See, they don't have faith. They have certainty.
Right.
And it scares the hell out of people.
Right.
I don't know if we get into this later in the book, but may as well now. The institutional structures in our society are crumbling.
Yes.
And if I go to a sponsor and I go to a meeting and all I am getting as a young person are, pithy little sayings and they're not taking me seriously, and the thing is just sit down and shut up, it's not going to meet my needs.
I feel very strongly when you hear that we only talk about alcohol here. It's like,
Yes.
That's not your meeting. That's not your meeting. Because if they're only going to talk about alcohol, that's maybe year one. Okay, great. Get dry. That's fine. But then you got to talk about all this other stuff. And where is that welcome? Where is it welcome to bring your whole self, not just your alcohol problem?
Right. Yeah. And solutions. I mean, I'm fine with getting to the solution, but the problems you're identifying in the book are human problems.
Yeah, they are. They are. Right.
And I can't check my humanity at the door.
Right.
At least I don't want to.
Right. I remember being in some meetings early on. I moved in recovery from Baltimore, where I was at a very, I would call it like very open, emotional meeting. Everybody talks about their feelings. And then I moved to upstate New York. Now, looked around, had to drive a long way, found a meeting. And I'm talking about how it felt to move to a new community, which was the relevant issue in my life at that time. And a man, I remember this, he reached across the table, he slapped the table and he said, stop whining. You're whining.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this may not be my meeting either. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Because it was grief.
He felt the same way about you. This may not be your meeting, Diane.
That's right. Right. Now, I have to say, later I understood. Here I am, this like nice middle-class girl from Baltimore has come here, new small town, way upstate New York. If I had looked around the meeting, I would have seen this is a former GE town, which up here means big poverty. These were men out of work. They had they had different issues. And like, here I am in my pretty clothes and talking about my move for more success. I could have been a little bit more sensitive, but I didn't know that. I just knew you went to a meeting and you talked about what was going on, which has served me well over the years, whatever it is. You
Right.
raise your hand and say it.
But you got to be selective. There are groups that will allow you to talk about those things, and groups where it's not so welcome.
Right. The same with sponsors. And I always say to people,
Oh, gosh.
that's why it's okay to change sponsors. You start with your sponsor because what look for someone who has what you want, right? So they look pretty good, they sound pretty good, but as you're getting to know them, maybe you want to grow, but they don't. They're like, they're smoking a cigarette. Honey, it's fine. We're here. And it's like,
Right.
thank you for your service. Thank you for helping me. I'm going to move on to Joan.
Which is difficult too, isn't it? There's a lot of people who stay stuck there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's an area where those of us who have more time can be helpful in that process, can talk about changing sponsors, having more than one sponsor, go to the meeting that is going to provide what you need right now.
Well, I love that about Bill Wilson. He had the one sponsor who twisted off up in your neck of the woods up
Abby.
there, Abby, up in Albany, and he never got another one. But what he said he did was, rather than look for a sponsor who had all of the answers, he tried to look for an individual who had an answer to a specific area
Right.
that he was troubled with,
Right.
who had done well with it.
Right.
Boy, I think that's much healthier.
Be in meetings and more than one meeting, so you see, like, okay, maybe you're at that point in your life where career is important to you. So you're going to pay attention to those people who have worked a program in their career, and how did they do that? How did they learn to supervise people? How did they learn to take feedback and not fall apart? And they're going to have to do that. And then new moms and dads, they need to talk to people who are parents, right? Who have used their recovery in parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sponsors, the idea was to bring them into the meeting, bring them into the program, not to create a lifelong dependency.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's where the spiritual comes in. The only place to, in a healthy manner, to put that dependency is on the divine.
Yes.
Yes,
your sponsor shouldn't be your higher power.
But they do become that, as can a therapist.
Yeah.
Tricky, this recovery thing, isn't
it? And also, I think what you're saying, books, experts, spiritual writers, psychological writers, what can we learn from them?
And I recognize their limitations as well. So I'm going to go to one book for just so much. But when it comes to this part of my life, this guy or gal is not the one. They haven't gone there.
Right. It's always, I always say, like, people who have never been parents giving parenting advice.
Right.
They have theories.
That's it. Okay. We touched on this, but let's go a little deeper in it, because I think it's really important. And in your book, you have a really troubling statistic. It's attributed to the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, that among drug-using women, 70% report having been abused sexually before the age of 16.
Right.
That's serious trauma. It doesn't come up much in meetings.
Right.
Nor can it, perhaps. I don't know.
I think it's really tricky, because I think if you think of the grand population of people who are in recovery, they have been sexually abused, but they may also have been perpetrators, not evil, but maybe they were kids having sexual activities with other kids. They were both being traumatized by that, right?
Yeah.
But not okay to talk about. Sex doesn't get talked about that much, and then that's such a sensitive subject.
It had better in your fifth step.
That's where it belongs, with the right sponsor who can hear that stuff, right? Who's going to make you feel safe and unashamed, and maybe share a little of their own. That's always very healing. And somebody says, honey, you're not the only one. It's okay.
Right.
And then you want a sponsor who's going to say, and that's a big wound. What are you doing about that? Not 1 to 6 meetings. Like, do you have a therapist who's going to be really helpful with that? Let's heal the rest of you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's also we know, even with all we know about sexual abuse and sexual contact among young people, it's still an issue, right?
And for men as well. Maybe the numbers are not quite as high, but boy, I've heard a lot of fifth steps, and it's there.
And I would suspect, just from the little bits that I have heard from men, more shameful. Men that have been sexually abused never want to talk about what they had to do or what was done to them, because
Right.
then you get homophobia mixed in there. You get all kinds of other stuff, and they're afraid of that. But the shame jacket that they're wearing is horrible.
Okay. I think what we're trying to point out some of the landmines that both women and men are going to experience as trudging that happy road of destiny.
Right.
I want to get to this thing you talked about, and I had to go back and read it a couple of 3 times. It's a section in this chapter titled Act, Think, Feel. I don't know that that's the order in which I'm accustomed to seeing them. So talk about that and use the example, if you would. I thought it was helpful, of your stepdaughter.
Right. So being a stepmother was a huge issue for me in recovery, right? I married a man who had a daughter, and, of course, that's a lovely fantasy in the beginning, but she was a teenager and then a young adult. And I'm the new wife. So we were born to have issues with each other, right? So I was jealous that he had a first marriage. She was the evidence. I was jealous of the time. He was a really good dad. So what's a good dad do? He spends time with his child. But I was jealous of that, because I was like not healthy. And then she was kind of giving me the side eye, like, what are you doing in my father's life? And why do I have to be in your house? And that kind of stuff. So we were like, first we were overly polite, we were snippy. It wasn't, I knew at the beginning to be a recovering woman, that was not what I wanted. And this is one of those times you want a sponsor who knows what you're going through. I wanted to talk to other women who had been stepmothers and how did they negotiate it? How did they manage it? So Jan and I are into this thing. And I thought, well, this is my work to do. She may have her own work to do. And thank goodness later in her life she did, which is very beautiful. But the first thing I had to do, and this is, great advice, was act. It was like, what kind of relationship would I like to have with this young woman? I would like to be friendly. I would like to be a little bit social. I would like to be family appropriate, right? I'm married to her dad. There's an appropriate kind of relationship. And I want to act like that. If I was an actress in this role, what would I act like? I didn't feel it. I didn't feel any of it. It was like, I'm going to be friendly. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be helpful. I'm going to inquire about her.
And that's not phony, because you are aware of what you are doing.
And I'm doing it with a purpose.
And a good purpose.
Yeah. To get this relationship on the surface, get it to be nice. And also to remember, I'm the adult, she's the child. So I do need to take this first step. So I would, and again, I would pick up the phone. I would tell my sponsor, I'm going to make a really nice breakfast for her today. And they're like, maybe my teeth were gritted or maybe she didn't appreciate it, but I'm going to be the bigger part. I'm going to act like it, right? And then
I'm going to act like an adult.
Exactly.
I'm not really one, but
right, because we know our development started way back when we started using our development.
We're pretty good actors, aren't we?
Right, and then simultaneous to that, it was like what I knew and was told was your thinking has to change. You're thinking while you're acting. The show goes on. Now you're thinking, what do I really want this relationship to be? What are my issues? What do I need to say about being like, how embarrassing to be jealous of a young adult woman, right? But there it was, and I had to think it through. And then I had to go back to my old wounds of being a teenager, of being 20 years old. What did I have unhealed from then? So a lot of intellectual work and no fun, a lot of phone calls with sponsors and friends and saying, I'm trying. Here's the thing, I trusted the process. And then gradually, very, very gradually over time, I would catch myself actually feeling the affection, feeling the wish for her goodwill, feeling when she would go off with her dad, like wanting them to have a great day, not being obsessed with what time did they come home, hoping that he came home having a nice day with his daughter, grateful that relationship was healing. And I would be so surprised to be like, oh my God, I actually felt that. I acted as if my way into it.
Right. That's what that thing means, act as if.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you stay there.
Right.
You have to gradually move towards maturity with
right.
it.
And I think that's the thinking piece. While while the show goes on and you're acting, it's because if you stayed in there, it would look so fakey over time. And
Right.
that would be an accusation, like you're just a fake stepmother. But
Yeah.
the real work was in the thinking stage. What's really going on in me, maybe in them, between us? What is she triggering in me? How do I do that? And the day that I knew something big had happened, I had on a great sweater. She was in a nice mood. She said, "I really like that sweater," and I thought, "You would look so nice in this sweater." It was genuine thought. And I feel like this was the progress. I did not take my sweater off and give it to her because I thought that's progress too. This is not going to be a codependent relationship. But I went back to the store and I bought one and sent it to her. And I thought it was the most genuine thing. I want you to have this pretty thing. But it took time. It took a lot of time.
So one of the things that gets confused, I think, we talked about the four absolutes in the last episode, and that one about purity. It's not just about sex; it's about purity of my intention.
Intention.
What was your intention in getting that sweater and giving? Was it pure or not, or was it contaminated with egotism?
I've seen both, right? And I've done both, right? But I knew
We
in
are
that
both.
moment, it was pure. I wanted her to have this thing. I could
Yeah,
tell she liked it. And it was
yeah,
like, it doesn't hurt me at all. Even if this doesn't change anything, I want her to have this.
right. And those are key moments. It's not
Yeah,
like I stay utterly pure throughout the day.
right, right. I could be mad at her the next morning for leaving the kitchen a mess.
It's kind of like Maslow's peak experiences. It's
Right,
oh, that felt pretty good. Maybe
right.
I want more of that.
That's the thing, right? Once you've had a few of those, it's like, I want to be a person who has more of those.
It's deeper inventory work.
Yeah,
Yeah, going deeper.
yeah.
Chapter 4 deals with a woman's spirituality. You start off with a flashback to when you would go swimming with your dad, and he would always be there to help you. You'd jump off the diving board, and he'd be waiting. And you lost him when you were 18, and that left a spiritual hole inside of you. Can you share with us about how that affected you when it came to your spirituality?
Yeah, because I was a little girl. My dad was a swimmer. He took us to the pool. He was teaching me how to dive, how to jump off the diving board. And he would always come out to the end of the board. He'd turn in water. He would catch me or not catch me. He would watch me. He would let me splash down in the water, come up, all confused. And he would point. He would say, swim to the ladder. Because he wanted me to be able to do that. He'd give me a shove on the butt and say, swim to the ladder. And it was very loving. Those were Sunday afternoons. Those are some of my best daddy moments. But then later, then he died when I was 18. And my resentment for years was I didn't have, go looking at colleges. I didn't have father-daughter talks. I didn't have those
Yes.
things that a girl would have with her dad. And it was a hole. And also we know that often we make our first higher powers based on our parents, right? And God is the father. We have that language. And so it's like, oh, I don't have one. I've lost one. But I realized in recovery that what he was doing at the end of that diving board is the gift. And that could be the spiritual gift and I say, I can have a God in my life who says, I'm here. It's okay. Let's look around. We don't want you to jump on anybody, right? Okay. I'm here.
We need those. I mean, you're talking about anthropomorphizing our image of God, and we can't help but do it. We're going to do it.
Right.
You're going to do it. One fellow said, if frogs believed in God, you can be sure God would be green.
Oh,
Yeah, but that's all we can do. We can't understand that which is beyond, but we can experience it, you
right.
see?
We have to give ourselves something. My fear was that because my dad died when I was young, that I didn't have that. And then I realized I had that daddy early in my life who made
Yeah.
sure I was safe.
Yeah. And for people who don't have the daddy image, if the daddy image is distorted, or,
Right.
I mean,
Or
distrustful, abusive, right? It's very difficult. That was the thing I noted for myself. I mean, I could not go to God the Father for many, many years. That image, it just didn't work for me because my father's, unlike yours, it was not a happy memory. I was raised Catholic, I didn't have come to Jesus stuff in my life. It was safe. He was like my brother. It was a safe relationship.
A nice man. I think Jesus was a nice man.
He was. And I could relate to him. He was human.
It's interesting. I mean, much later, I did the Ignatian spiritual exercises, which spends a lot of time with Jesus, literally. And that helped me, right? Like, oh, smart guy, nice guy. I can follow you.
Right. Yeah. And if you do the Ignatian stuff, I've done a fair amount of that. Use your imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, some people get twisted off on two-way prayer when I say use your imagination. Imagine that God's speaking to you. Well, no, I want to sit there and wait until he does. Well, just use your imagination. Get it going.
Well, it's funny when people say, I can't imagine things. And I say, are you a worrier? Do you worry? That's imagination. That is your imagination. That terrible thing might happen. This might happen.
We let that voice in all the time.
We do.
Yeah,
we do.
Absolutely.
Oh, my gosh.
Nice. Okay. You talk about your need to get out of God's way. Talk about that. What does that mean?
This probably was like the turning point in making me really want recovery. Early in recovery, went to my regular meeting, and it was a daily meeting. And I love daily meetings because I always say, we come back to hear the story. Whatever you said yesterday, I want to hear. What'd your boss say? What'd your husband say? We come back again. So a woman who was a regular in the meeting, she raised her hand. She was really...
That's the importance of small groups.
Yes.
Where you get to know people and they get to know you. If you go into these great big meetings, that's not going to happen.
Right. You're not going to have that continuity.
No.
Right. Might have a great speaker. But I was in this meeting and I kind of, sort of as a newcomer would, you recognize these people, and this woman raised her hand and started to seem fairly very shaken up. And what she described was the day before her young daughter was hit by a car on their lawn. A car jumped the curb, hit her daughter, badly injured. Neighbors come, ambulance comes. She gets in the ambulance and she is praying. And she's like, of course, save her life. Don't let her be hurt. Please, no brain damage. Help. And then she said the words that just to this day blow me away. She said, I changed my prayer. I started to say, God, get me out of your way. Help me to stay out of your way. And I thought, what mother can rise to the level of that prayer, looking at the broken body of their child? And she said, but I knew, right? And I thought, I remember just like looking at her and thinking, how did she get there? And I looked around the room and said, it's these folding chairs. It's these folding chairs. And whatever it is that she has, and I didn't even know what it was at that time, it's like, I wanted something to do with being in these rooms. God, help me to get out of your way. Even today, I have to think, I want something to go a certain way, or I want somebody to be a certain way. And then, like, after the fact, I think, God, it's your way. It's not my way. It's your way. It's not my way. And I'll try to get out of your way.
Right. Rather than giving God the script.
Oh, do this, do that. Make him say this.
I have orders for you, God.
Yeah.
And when you're done with those, come back. I have more.
I can't do the list. It's on the chalkboard right here.
That's it. That's it. But this is taking life on life's terms. I always think if people would substitute the word life for God, it would be different.
Because they wouldn't get tripped up on the word God. Whatever that image is that they have.
Whatever that projection is. Back to the green frog.
Right.
We project that stuff. God is our Father, and yet God is not our Father.
Right.
And if you want to stay stuck in the image, you're going to stay immature.
Right.
One thing you can be sure of, whatever our ideas of God are, they're wrong.
Yeah. Right.
It's a given. It's a given.
How could we possibly know? I remember, and it's time to go back and read this book. I forget the author's name, but the title is Your God is Too Small.
Yes.
Whatever
Yes.
your God is, it's too
It's too
small.
small.
Because if it has an identity, you created that identity. You put him in a box or a container
Yeah.
or made him green or whatever it is. But I would say my concept of God and higher power, whatever, it has changed so much over time, right? As a kid, I grew up Methodist, so the good news about growing up Methodist is we learned Jesus loves you, right? It's positive. That's the positive part of it. We
Right.
didn't get a whole lot of bad sin talk, which I'm
Just
grateful
a
for.
lot of hymns.
Oh, we can sing. Oh, we can sing. Right. And then different stages of my life and in my own growth, my psychological growth, spiritual growth, I had to let the image of God change, or it was changed, maybe by
Right.
beautiful things. Sometimes being in beautiful places, it's like, no way, there's not a God. Nothing could have created that beauty. Nothing could have created that thing I'm seeing. A lot of times what I say to people when they're God shy, or they'll right away they'll say, like, I'm an atheist, I'm an agnostic. And it's like, great, that's fine. What's bigger than you? And
Right.
people know right away what's bigger than them, even if they don't believe in God, because they'll say the mountains, nature, the ocean. So then I say, what's your relationship with that? Because this is relational, for people that come up in very traditional religions and stay with them. It's like, you've got to relate. The whole point of having a God is to have a relationship, right?
Right.
So how
And
are
that
you going to do it?
relationship needs to grow and deepen
Yes.
and change
Right.
over time. If it doesn't, something's wrong. Same thing with AA.
Yeah.
I mean, your relationship with AA needs to grow and change over time.
And that is very threatening to some people, right?
Oh, terribly so.
They're afraid of their relationship with AA changing. They're terrified of AA changing, which it's doing right now. Oh my God, right? Some people are changing how it works. Some people, when they read it in the meeting, they're changing language and how they read steps or read traditions, or they read conscience statement. I'm in a meeting right now that is drafting a new group conscience statement. Oh my God, the drama, right? AA should change. Holy cow.
Yeah.
But it has to meet the level of your needs of most of the people in the room. What are their needs?
Is it meeting them or is it not? And we have to be courageous enough. I always add that as the fifth absolute. Honesty, purity, unselfishness, love, and courage.
Wow. Wow.
Because it takes that to live this life.
I'm still amazed during the pandemic that people got sober on Zoom. The courage to show up on a computer with a bunch of Hollywood squares.
Right.
And it's like nobody to offer you a cup of coffee or give you a hug is amazing. But the courage that it takes for a newcomer to walk through the door. But then later to say, I think I better try some therapy. Oh God, that's scary.
Right.
I think I better get a sponsor. Oh, that's scary. I'll go to coffee with the women. Oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
I'll look at this part of myself. That's really scary.
Yep. That's where we have to go. What are some of the spiritual tools that have come along in your life that have helped you when you were ready for them?
Oh boy, there's a ton, because it's like my. It sounds fun. In fact, it's like a hobby. It's like I like learning about two-way prayer. I was so excited. It was like a new spiritual tool.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Let's go into this one. I think prayer and meditation, prayer always, even as a kid, prayer took different forms for sure.
Right.
From memorized prayer to realizing that I could talk to my higher power. All kinds of meditation. I've been to, taking the classes and gone to retreats and done all that kind of stuff. And,
retreats are important, aren't they?
Oh, they're very important.
Yeah.
To have that container.
Right.
I always say, especially to women earlier in recovery, figure out where a retreat's going to go in the next year or two. Save up your money if it involves any travel, or in your local area, who's having a day retreat. Get that into your lifelong recovery practice to have a retreat. And hear that. What else have I done? The Ignatian spirituality. Now, several years ago, I have a spiritual director who is, you'll love this. He's a deacon in the Catholic Church, and he's a Jungian analyst. So it's
nice.
It's a fabulous combination.
Yeah.
And so I asked him to be my spiritual director, and he's introduced me to lots of other things, and then the Ignatian spiritual exercises, and all that Ignatian material that I brought into practice. And this is one of the things a lot of people don't realize, how much Ignatian material forms 12-step programs. We know how the Oxford group brought their stuff in, but they were bringing, Jung was behind the scenes there. So Jung comes in the door. We know that Bill corresponded with Jung. Wow, mind-blowing stuff. But the Ignatian stuff, which is when I like to take some of the Ignatian concepts and look at the steps, like the 10th step is the examine, which is an Ignatian spiritual daily practice where I examine my life every morning or night and kind of mini inventory. And that became our 10th step inventory, right?
Well, you got to be careful with that. I mean, it didn't come till later.
Yes, absolutely.
It dovetails with the program.
Yes.
But it wasn't the origin of the program.
Right. That's right. Yeah. That's correct. That's important to say that, to know where that comes. And then, because then all these streams do start flowing in, right?
Right.
And I imagine, like, years from now, people will be saying, I remember back in the 2000s, I read Eckhart Tolle, or I read, somebody who's a spiritual self-help writer now, who began to have an influence.
Right.
The idea of going to therapy, not present in 1939. And now we talk about it,
right.
or inner work or inner child work. Those influences are trickling in. What else did
you did Course in Miracles too, you mentioned.
Oh, I did. That was very, very early on. Again,
me too.
Kind of by accident. One of my still drinking, I ran away from home to my sister in Los Angeles. And of course, when I think about how inarticulate I was then, I couldn't tell her what was going on. It was just like, oh, I need to come visit you. And I was breaking down inside. I knew something was wrong. I knew I was using drugs and alcohol. But she was like a Sunday school teacher in her church, right? Mm-hmm. And I think she was paid. She was the spiritual director at church. So she comes home and she just says, there's this woman at church, came to our church group and talked about how you make miracles happen. And for some reason, I knew I needed a miracle. And I went, what is that? And she had a pamphlet on Course in Miracles. And I remember I snuck it into my suitcase. I stole it, of course, and I took it home with me. And then I looked up where Course in Miracles were. And we know that is possibly channeled spiritual material. The principles not unlike recovery, self-examination, higher power, those kinds of things, which I was ripe for.
It's intimacy, isn't it?
It is all about intimacy.
It's moving from the head to the heart.
And talk about courage. That's scary. That's a scary journey, right?
Oh, yeah.
Head to heart.
Head to heart.
Because what might I find? Because I think especially, I'm going to say early in recovery, ultimate recovery, it's like, if I really went inside of me, what would I find? That's why we're afraid of our fifth step. If she heard what I did, if she heard what I think, it will be so shameful.
Mm-hmm.
In this conversation, I'm thinking how much courage there is all through this. Through this.
It's the hero's journey, the heroine's journey in this case.
Wow. It is a hero's journey.
And you have to look at it that way. And I think if we presented it that way, we'd get more receptivity amongst the young.
Yes.
Excite them.
Yes.
Engage them. Yeah, because that's what they're starting out on.
Because wouldn't that feel very appealing? Would you like to be part of a hero's journey? Yes, I would. I'm going to be a hero.
Right. Well, strap on your armor and off we go. Yeah.
Into battle.
The only people crazy enough to sign up for the military are young people, It's they don't try going after the 40, 50-year-olds.
No, they're like, no, thanks.
No, thank you. Been there, done that. The other ones are indestructible. They think. Yeah. And military plays on that. It plays on their indestructibility until they find out that they're not.
But I have to say, I'm so delighted at this stage, and I hope there's more stages coming, to discover two-way prayer. And of course, how long it's been there, right? In the background.
Yeah.
I read something the other day, maybe somebody handed out a retreat. It was like, and it was called like Dr. Bob's something method of prayer. And I read it and it was like, write down a concern, sit quietly, hear some, pay attention, and then whatever you heard, right? And it was like, oh, now I know what that is. I know what he was telling people, two-way prayer.
If you find that, send it to me.
I will. I think it was a handout at a retreat. Yeah.
Oh, if you can get a hold of that, let me have it. getting ready to do the newsletter for July, and I'd love to put that in there if we could.
Right.
I think if people come at things differently, it's pretty much the same journey. There's not too many variations on the theme.
It's also like telephone game, like maybe Bill or Bob said something and then somebody heard it a little bit differently, or they explained it a little bit differently.
Yeah, very good. Okay, good place to quit. I always do this. I'm going more slowly than I ever thought we would. But we're filling up the time, and I think we're getting some good information.
It's a great conversation. Thank you for this conversation.
If we can't have fun with this thing, let's not do it. So that's my attitude. So
good.
So I want to thank you for another great episode, and I want to thank you guys for listening. I hope this was helpful to you. And if it was, please pass it on. Let other, in this case, women and or men, let them know. And please, by all means, keep coming back. God bless.
Bill, thank you.
Thank you.